Yep.
We're ready.
Yep.
Ready?
Oh, yes. Ready.
Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang. We need to go to full screen on camera 3, please. Welcome to what promises to be an interesting show, if we can get it off the ground. We've got Kevin Marks. Where are you? Are you in England?
I'm
in Cambridge.
I'm in Cambridge, but the copy Cambridge, not the original. I'm at Harvard for the VRM workshop.
I'm not sure how to take that. Copy
It's nice. It's almost as nice as the real Cambridge. It's good.
Yeah. That's the Queen for you. Is that you, Danny?
Yeah. My other phone, which never rings, decides to ring. Sorry.
Well, that's by way of introducing Danny Sullivan. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you.
Say that again, just for the record.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, and Robert Scoble is
I'm hanging out in your kitchen.
That's right. That's a weird poster behind there. I wonder what that means. The bombs are falling. And
no commentary on the art in your house.
You better not. You be very careful. That's a poster that my mother-in-law had framed. And my mother had saved from the communist conspiracy wars of the 30s. So, yes. And we actually haven't checked their audio yet, but coming to us from the Googleplex, the great state of mind of Google, is Chris Messina. Hi, Chris. And John Panzer. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
All right, so you guys are going to have to get real cozy. Yeah, exactly. Isn't it's just about open. Everything's open, right?
That's great.
All right, so the reason that I invited Chris and John on the show, other than that Chris is always welcome, and I don't know John actually, but I'm about to find out, is that there was I got an email from Buzz. I didn't realize that I had a friend named Buzz, but it turned out to be Google Buzz, and it was announcing that there was the track was back. Basically, Brett Slatkin had sent me or had @signed me on Buzz, and that somehow turned into an email to me in Gmail. And there's something about track. So without further ado, can you tell us, let's start with you, Chris. What's up?
Sure. So yesterday we launched a new feature for the Buzz API, which I knew you'd be excited about, that we're also excited about, which allows you to subscribe essentially to real-time search results via PubSub. So when you have a certain term that you want to receive push-based notifications from, you can just create a new subscription, and you'll receive those things as they happen. The other thing that's interesting about the way that it's implemented is that you can also geo-restrict your queries. So you could ask for, let's say, coffee in Cambridge, Massachusetts, as opposed to England, and get coffee results pushed to you in real time. So that's essentially the feature that we launched yesterday, and some of the underlying stuff is stuff that you've worked on, right?
Yeah. So this builds on some of the infrastructure that we have been building out with Brett Slatkin, and it's all based on the PubSub real-time standard-based push infrastructure. And so if all the libraries and services that already talk PubSub now talk by putting in the right URLs.
Now, I don't know why, but we're getting sort of intermittent audio. Either it's because you're speak up a little bit, John. Maybe we'll see. If that doesn't work, then we'll go to Plan B, which is
all right. So the whole thing that we just launched yesterday builds on top of the PubSub infrastructure.
All right. Now, how does it build on top of the PubSub infrastructure?
Everything is delivered through PubSub. So everything is just a feed, the same type of feeds we always use. And when you point at a feed and you say subscribe to it, your existing services and libraries will just work with these track feeds, and you'll start getting the real-time results pushed to you. So you can actually take a track URL, stick it into Google Reader, for example, and have the results be pushed to you in real time. So you can track your coffee in Cambridge, Massachusetts, or your tea in Cambridge, England, and and keep track of it.
Now, Google Reader, how often does that update?
Well, it's real time. So with PubSub, it gets pushed into you. I'm not sure how frequently the UI refreshes, but if you were hitting reload, it would be instant. Other tools will also do nice animations to push it down to your client instantly.
All right. Well, I'm not a big fan of having to keep pushing reload.
Right.
That seems to be Twitter's answer to track, is to have a little sign that at the top of the frame that tells you how many messages you can't read because they haven't made them visible. So do you have a better plan than that?
Yeah, so I should just back up a little bit and say the Google Reader thing is just a quick and dirty way of sticking the results in there and being able to see them. The right way to do this is through using services that know that you're going to be dealing with real-time data and pull them down and show them to you, instantly. We have that sort of functionality in some tools. I don't know that we have a demo for Track right now, but we probably should have a demo app that puts it up. We have one for the fire hose, which is the same sort of deal. That's buzz-mood.appspot.com, and I can stick that URL in the chat. Okay, Chris will do it. And that's just showing all the moods across all users. But you could, I've been pestering people to make a good version of this that says, show me the moods for people in my city, which would be a pretty cool demo. I want to see how people are feeling in Cambridge right now.
So that's the location stuff, basically.
Yeah, right. You can do location and search terms right now.
So you have to sign up for Latitude and then make that visible.
You have to be using Buzz with geo-tagged content, and you could post to the Buzz API using geo-tagged posts. So you could also use whatever kind of client that you want that supports the Buzz APIs. All
right, well, I got a bunch of other questions, but I want to let Robert ask a question. And here's the question I'd like you to ask, Robert. What does this do for FlipScam? Does this help FlipScam in any way?
You mean Flipboard?
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting question. How would developers use these APIs to build some new pagination system like Paperly or Flipboard?
Sure. Go ahead. Okay. So, I mean, I guess both to answer your question and Steve's question, the track functionality is available essentially as sort of an API or a service. So, just like you can get any other activity stream content pulled out of the Buzz API, so you can get the fire hose or a garden hose. You can now restrict those hoses essentially to be query based. I mean that's the big difference here. And so you can create interfaces or interactions that are based around receiving constant streams of activities that can be turned into a Flipboard style interaction if you wanted to. Say you're reading an article, let's say it takes you 15 minutes to read the article. By the time you're finished reading the article, there could be a number of new links or posts or content at the bottom of that article by the time you arrive that have come in since you started reading that material. And that's because, again, it's based on PubSub, it's based on push. So it's no longer a demand or pull based model where, to Steve's point, you have to continually refresh it. The stuff is coming to you delivered over the wire as it's available and as it's being created.
Now, Google Buzz gets pretty noisy at times. Can I talk to it and filter it the way DataSift, for instance, is going to let me filter? For instance, can I say, show me all the items with the word seismic in it, but remove any that don't have any comments?
That's a great question.
So right now, I don't think that there's a search restriction term that'll say give me only things with comments. That would be a cool feature to have, right? It's just another search criteria. You can of course take them and drop all the ones that don't have comments on the floor, and then when things do end up with comments later on, you actually get new updates telling you that hey, this thing now has a comment, and it'll tell you how many comments and what the date of the last comment is, so you can go and grab them, so you get a second chance later on.
Yeah, so you could actually do the filter on the client side where you specify what your preferences are, to your point, maybe they have to reach a minimum threshold of activity. There needs to be 5 comments. Well, maybe there's no comments. Or again, within a geographic radius. And then you say, these are the things that I actually want to, attenuate to. And I think one of the points here is that we want to make this stuff available so that developers have a source of raw data, essentially, to be creating these new interactions and interfaces that currently don't exist. One of the challenges, of course, of motivating people to build interesting applications on top of whether it's activity streams or whether it's real-time data is having a resource that provides a good stream of information and data that you can build upon. So we hope that this sort of is a good first step in that direction where as you're receiving, again, these notifications of new content, you could actually build much more compelling applications and interfaces than might currently exist. So
it's not really totally competitive with DataSift then, right?
It's complementary.
It's complementary. So
yeah.
Are you working with Nick Halstead to hook in your system so that if I write rules in DataSift, can I talk to your system?
So it's a good question. One of the things that Nick could do is allow you to set up sort of track subscriptions to searches against the Buzz corpus, and that would be maybe a more efficient way for him to actually gather the data from our systems. The way that TweetMeme and DataSift are currently consuming data from us is actually from the Firehose itself, so he's getting all of the data anyways. Now, it's up to him to provide those downstream features of providing those filters, but it's up to him how he wants to implement that. Either he can get the full Firehose or he just gets specific queries for individual users.
Danny, is this the Google real-time play that you were alluding to last week?
I don't know, to be honest. Most of it's going over my head when you start getting into the APIs.
That's okay. These guys are going to explain everything. I just want you to talk for a minute. That's all.
From my perspective, I was interested in the Google real-time search that rolled out yesterday as its own homepage, its own service that you could actually go to.
Yeah, and is there a relationship between what you're talking about and what those services are?
I'm wondering, actually. I was wondering if Chris wants to tell us if there is, because that came out yesterday, and they've got this service that came out today, so it gives me the impression that something has been set up. The Google real-time service allows you to use an ordinary Google alert to send you an update as soon as they see an update, which suggests that they're using the same kind of back-end technology.
So you were shaking your head, Chris, as though they aren't related. Is that true?
Well, it's a funny thing. There's a lot of coincidence that ends up happening at Google. I think John can speak to some of the more specifics about the relationship between the two products. I think it was a little incidental or coincidental that they launched on the same day. On the one hand, the real-time search is more about providing sort of, again, that interface, right, to real-time information that we're ingesting. So this is information coming from Twitter and other sources that Google is pulling into its index, making sense of as it's being indexed, and then presenting it to you in the search results. The track feature, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite side of that, which is to say that content being generated through the Buzz system natively on Google properties is then being pushed out to people who have requested those search terms, to get pushed to them. So they're very similar in terms of their application, but they're quite different in terms of the sourcing of the information.
Is there any way that you can do what we were able to do with the original track, which is to push that back into the Buzz stream so that it can be, if you're watching Buzz or some sort of a bot or an XMPP version of Buzz, where those two streams, in other words, the people you follow plus the people that you track or the items that you track are interleaved together?
Sure, for sure.
Is that available now, or is that?
It's not a feature of Buzz as it exists today, but I would hope that clients would enable that type of functionality where you say you could subscribe to people and their Buzz post in real time, whether that information is being syndicated or ingested from third parties, or you could essentially follow a search term or a phrase or whatever it is that's based on some geo-coordinate, which would be cool if it updated depending on where you went, and have those results pushed to you just like person data.
Okay, Kevin, your thoughts?
I'm excited to see this. I think this is a good step forward for the the Buzz API. It is a little confusing when you've already got a search API on Buzz, and now we've got this thing as well. Was the search API not PubSub enabled before? Was that purely polling?
Yeah, the search API was not PubSub enabled, and this is it's pretty much maps directly to the search API. You can do the same sorts of searches, the same kinds of search terms. I'm not sure if it supports all of these search terms that the search API does, but where they do the same things, they talk the same language.
I see.
And it's the same kind of queue. The query language is queue equals and then a search term.
Right.
And there were some technical things which made us just use slightly different URLs. But other than that, it's very, very much parallel.
So let me understand this. You were not aware of the other product.
I don't think that's accurate.
It's not entirely accurate. Launch schedules.
Well, let me give you an example.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you. Okay. Is there that kind of relationship between the two products?
It's more like I can see you and there's like a couple seconds delay.
Okay. So explain the metaphor, please. No, I'm serious. I mean, there's these. I mean, somebody at Google Wave didn't get the memo about Google Buzz and vice versa, and we've seen Google Wave disappear. So, are we going to see one of these two services disappear, or?
Yeah, I mean, they're different things, and I also think that it's also about Google's culture of kind of parallelizing innovation, not paralyzing, but parallelizing. It's a very, very important distinction. Where
we could get Jiri on the show, and he could talk about it.
Paralyzing, yeah. We had Dennis talk about that last week. Yeah.
Yes.
So, there's just a practice of having a number of different sort of solutions to similar problems being tried at a number of different times and at a number of different rates. The real-time search stuff, I think, is much more currently of a consumer-oriented feature, whereas the track functionality in of Buzz is more of a developer-oriented feature that allows people to build better experiences on top of the Buzz APIs.
Which consumers can then use. And
right. But
and then
as
they
opposed
become
to
competitive
Google
with
for
each
consumer
other.
experience, we would rely on the DataSifts of the world to consider how that might be put in, and then eventually we'll probably roll out, I don't know precisely, but we'll probably roll out something like that in the Buzz product itself. All
right, so Robert, you did a video earlier this week on DataSift. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you saw and what you think about it?
Yeah, DataSift lets you talk to the Firehose feed from Twitter right now and maybe others soon. And right now that's 800 tweets per second that's going through the entire Twitter. And you can sift off things using dozens, hundreds, or thousands of rules. So I could say, show me all the tweets with the words Obama in them, but only show me the ones from San Francisco, for instance, or only show me the ones with from people who have the word developer in their Twitter bio, or only show me the ones from people who have a clout score of 80 or more. And you can start adding these rules together so that you get fewer and fewer and fewer tweets coming onto your screen that are very, very specific. It's really an exciting technology, but it's a new programming language that you use to talk to the engine, and it's a new infrastructure system that is designed to let you do these real-time sifting, basically. It's track, but it's crack on steroids.
It's crack on steroids.
Track on steroids.
Okay. Track on crack, yeah.
So, Danny, do you... one of the things that we talked about last week, and this is a little bit difficult to grasp, given the number of different services that are simultaneously being rolled out by people in the next cubicle. But does this get any closer to the idea? I mean, one of the things about Track that was always, I thought, important with the original implementation was, at least the implication of it is that not only could you be aware of people, but as Robert just pointed out, you could be aware of, you could have a filter that was aware of certain people or certain characteristics of a stream associated with a person, and you could also rule those people out in terms of of them interrupting your stream in real time. And I gather from what, John, you were talking about, that we're going to be seeing that sort of capability become available to the Google Buzz stream. Perhaps nothing else but the Google's Buzz stream, at least initially, but that's going to be a substantial ability to be able to essentially use the social graph and related signals to be able to constrain the stream while at the same time having a lot of discovery available. Does that make sense, Danny?
I got lost along the way. I'm sorry, Steve.
Well, there are two vectors here. There's discovery, and then there's catching up. Catching up requires you to either sit there with, and like in Clockwork Orange, directly have, billions of tweets inserted directly into your cortex, or you filter them in some way based on some sort of prioritization system and personalization system. And those are the things that have been used as excuses for why Twitter stopped doing this in the first place. Now we've got, a big player here coming in with the ability to do this, to be able to personalize each stream so that the context of what's being sent to them not only filters it to some reasonable rate based on some sort of priority other than last in, first out, and it also adds, it maintains the possibility of anybody being able to get in touch, the discovery aspect. So those two things, you put them together and you've got a system which is much more powerful than what we have right now.
Yeah, I guess it's hard. If you look at Twitter, people handle it in different ways. I go onto Twitter and I don't. When I first started using Twitter, I used to try to treat it as if it was email, and I would literally try to read every single thing that was in my stream, and I would go back and work my way through it. And I got so much happier when I sort of adopted the Dave Wiener River News idea. And it's like, if I see it, I see it, and if I don't see it, I don't see it. And so in that regards, Twitter for me, I haven't needed a whole lot of organization to be applied to it. I don't worry if I've missed the link the first time it was out there, because chances are I'm going to see it on the third or fourth time when somebody else retweets it. And if I don't see it at all, well, life kind of moves on. I got enough other things keeping me going. So it's that kind of like I'm walking into a bar, I'm walking into a room and seeing what people are talking about, and I don't worry about what people are talking about when I'm not there. I'm doing other things.
So you're not a big fan of Track, in other words?
Not in terms of I need to have things better organized for me. Now, having said that, if it was implemented and somebody did something super wonderful, especially within my application, I might go, oh, I can't believe I've been working this way. It's kind of like when Gmail came along and you're like, I can't believe I've been trying to fight through my email in one way when there was a much easier way for me to search through it all. What I have found interesting are a number of the services that do the aggregation of things that have been tweeted. The paper leaves that I've just been looking at this week, simply because I'm trying to figure out how to tell people to turn off the notifications that drive me crazy. But the service itself is interesting in how it's kind of showing you all the different things that have been out there tweeted. But still, personally, I probably won't go back to that each day to keep up on it. I've got enough that's just, I've already got so much flowing through my feed, and I don't feel like my feed is out of control because I long ago gave up trying to exert control over it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we haven't even talked about the new clients that are coming out. I mean, Seismic and TweetDeck just shipped this week a new user stream version, and on my screen, Twitter just keeps moving down in real time as people publish.
But Robert, you're the only person on Earth who can actually consume that.
I can't even consume it, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, we know that, but I mean, you're the only one who tries. Put it that way.
Yeah, but it's interesting to watch this. But now that more and more people are following more and more people, they need ways to sift these things out into little buckets that they can come and visualize. For one thing, we're now adding location data into Google Buzz, into Facebook, into Foursquare, all over the place. And I want to see tweets based on where they're being published from, specifically when there's an earthquake. I only want to see tweets from San Francisco when there's an earthquake. I don't want to see it from New York. I Who cares about New York? What New York thinks about a San Francisco earthquake? I want to see what people are publishing right around me.
Well, I agree with you.
You've got two options to do that right now, though, Robert. I mean, you could go to Bing Maps and see them actually plotted on a map, and then Google's system yesterday that it rolled out lets you do it in the same way. You just put in the location that you want and what you're searching for, and there you go.
Yeah, except now I can't. Now I want to do what DataSift shows me. I want to be able to sift on different things and location. So show me all the tweets from San Francisco that have the word earthquake that were written by venture capitalists, and I can do that with DataSift. I can't do that yet with the other systems.
And I want all the information without
sophistication, for sure.
I want the filter that takes out the VCs.
What's that?
I want everybody except the VCs.
You can do that, right? You can say remove any item from any Twitterer that has the word venture in their bio, and then you won't see the VCs.
Yeah, that's when it ships. But these guys are actually shipping this right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out something else that, while you can use Bing Maps and you can use Google real-time search for these things, one of the things that we want to enable is, again, a lot of parallel innovation. So the fact that this API is available for developers to use today means that you can start building these types of new interactions and pull together different streams and sources of real-time information to create those more compelling types of applications. I know, there are a lot of people who will sort of sit and watch Twitter through their various applications on the desktop. They'll receive notifications. But being able to create new experiences around that content, I think, is kind of what this API is about enabling. The other thing that's worth pointing out is that all the content that we're delivering over this API is formatted using the activity streams format. So you're actually able to get a much richer source of information of what's actually going on and a sense for what's going on than you might otherwise, where you presume everything is just a tweet or a blog post. We're, I hope, going to have richer fidelity over time in terms of the activities that we're syndicating, so that you can start to see a greater diversity of things that people are doing across the social web, so that you can, again, build more compelling interactions and interfaces based on the types of content or based on the activities that are being done, rather than just sort of hoping that it kind of works out for the generic content that's coming through the system.
Someone on the in the chat room asks about how this setup works, and Robert replied by saying that you can't hook up multiple people on Skype yet. That's not accurate. Actually, they have a beta that's out now that allows, I think, up to 5 streams or 4 or 5 streams that you can, but they're going to charge for that, they say. And interestingly, Google has just released Google phone capability inside Gmail along with Google Video, GChat with video. So there's a real race brewing there. But sorry to divert from this. It does lead me actually to ask the question of our Google guests, which is right now Buzz doesn't have a lot of people associated with it. If you want to look inside Google and see what all you engineers are doing, it's a great source. In fact, it's the only source as far as I can tell. But there are people like me who want to have all of my Twitter stream, all my Twitter follows basically being archived and then pushed back out through a real-time stream, where if I could then add track and the ability to be able to respond in real time, then we would have what we had 73 years ago with the original track. So, how's that going? How's the what is obviously a political situation going with inputting the Twitter stream and applying filters to it, which you seem to now be developing through this track capability?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't have a great answer for you. I think the reality that I've learned to sort of embrace, I suppose, is that we have a lot more liberty to work with content that is produced on Google properties. And so as such, I think that it's important that we figure out ways of making Buzz, a competitive social environment for people to engage and to have conversations. I have noticed, in spite of your assertion, that there's actually quite a lot of engagement going on my Buzz stream that's different in nature to a lot of the other interactions that I have on or within other social media.
Oh, that's completely fair, and I didn't say anything that was contradictory to that. In fact, what I was saying was in the thread that where Brett Slatkin pinged me to say that this was happening, the next comment by somebody was, "Well, that's great, but there's so little traffic going on in Buzz." So I was just repeating what that guy said.
Yeah.
So you blame him.
I mean, that's fine. I think what I've noticed, though, I guess to sort of answer that comment, and it's a fine observation or impression to have based on personal experience, is that I think people are actually using Buzz in a lot of really interesting ways, where there's smaller conversation circles that are starting to emerge. Where I know we use Buzz internally quite productively. I'm looking forward to the day when people can run Buzz on their own domain. And that'll give them the ability, I think, to actually have better, richer conversations where the audience is more apparent to them. So I think what we're seeing with Buzz right now is that it's sort of in this awkward adolescent phase where it's a good product. It does what it needs to do. I do find it actually pretty good to use, and I think a lot of the stuff that we're building through the APIs is building a good foundation for subsequent interactions around Buzz. But I think figuring out how it fits into one's sort of day-to-day social media workflow is still being decided, especially because it lives right next to the inbox. There's a question of, well, should I use Buzz or should I use the inbox, and which one's more convenient, and so on. So I think those things hopefully will be ironed out over time. But there's certainly content being pushed through there, and in so much as we're able to resyndicate it, we do. So it's still a good asset and resource for building applications, I think.
Well, FriendFeed has a reasonable track record, at least in recent months, with taking Twitter tweets and pushing them back out through the system in both directions. So it seems like that's authorized, at least for Facebook, which I would think is not exactly a partnership deal with Twitter. So how come you guys can't do that?
I don't know. I think that you should probably double check, your source if you have a source on that. I think that there's a certain aspect,
How long does it take for a tweet to come into Buzz?
Longer than it probably should, and I think that we're trying to work on that issue.
So maybe a little pressure from people asking this question might be helpful. In other words.
I think if you put it out there to the ethos, maybe the gods will shine on us.
Okay.
Eventually.
So other than that, what about Facebook?
TBD. Again, Dave Recording's a good friend of mine, and we have conversations a lot. Mm-hmm. And I am not part of all those conversations that would lead to, I guess, the types of things that we'd like to, the reality that we're all sort of desiring.
Mm-hmm. John, how about PubSub Hubbub? Is that being adopted by Facebook as we had discussed? I don't know, about a month ago. There was some talk about some limitations in the implementations of similar protocols. Is that? Can you give us any detail on that?
Well, I can say that we're talking with Facebook about ways to try to unify the real-time push protocols, because Facebook has their own, some of which is actually very similar to and is using pieces of PubSub Hubbub, and we're talking with them about how they can use the whole thing. And so it's extending PubSub Hubbub so it can deal with things like JSON data is a big thing.
Private data too, right? And
private data is a huge thing that we're currently working on, and that there is a proposal out there which Brett, I think, has sent out links to. So I think I'm pretty excited about this, and I think that both for Facebook and in general, it will greatly increase the capabilities and reach of PubSub Hubbub, so that it's something that you would just naturally use for all types of content and all types of situations of all types of private and public data, which I think will be a win for everybody. Yeah.
This is what's that guy's name? Ferguson on CBS. Craig Ferguson. He has these awkward, painful silences that he does occasionally.
On purpose?
Definitely. How do you like it?
It's awesome.
Feels great.
Thanks. Kevin, have you locked up, or are you going to say something? No, I can't hear you all of a sudden.
I think that's a painful silence.
Did you change your audio for some reason? No, can't hear him. All right, let's see if we can get him back. Robert, you got any questions?
Yeah, I just wonder where Google is going with the social sphere, and it's why we keep wondering what's the next thing that Google's going to come out with. Google Buzz is very much like friend feed to me. It's a great place to have a conversation, but I'm getting 1/1000th as much news out of it than I get out of Twitter. And Facebook has my normal everyday friends, and they're not going to try Google Buzz. And I think that's really the marketing challenge for Google Buzz, is to try to find what it is that it does for the world other than conversations, if it's going to do anything. And then where is Google going in the world of social?
And Kevin, by the way, can you talk just for a second?
Hi.
Okay, thanks.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay,
now be quiet.
I'll be quiet.
Sorry, I wanted to hear the answer to that question.
Actually, I would be interested in Kevin's perspective on that, I think.
Me too. Right after you answer.
Well, I think the question is, or I'm sorry, the answer is that it's evolving. I think that Buzz, as far as I'm concerned, has been a very good first step forward. I think it's putting something into the marketplace that Google needed to have, and it allows us to, I think, learn a lot. Frankly, it's actually introduced the type of interactions that you described in Friend Feed to a much broader audience. Mm-hmm. And I think there's still a lot of questions about how to get the interaction right, how to get the user experience right, and how to make discovery of those features more apparent and more obvious. Because I think what I've heard and what I've seen is that once people actually explore Buzz and start using it, they find that there's actually a good amount of value there that allows them to have different types of conversations than they might have on Facebook or on Twitter. That isn't to say that that value is readily apparent to everybody who uses it, and I think that's one of the things that, from a product perspective, we need to...
Yeah, but Chris, I'm seeing a huge amount of churn. I got a lot of people that I followed, yep, and a lot of people followed me in that first couple of weeks, and a lot of them have not been back to use Buzz lately. Yep. Now, I agree, there is an audience there, and I love talking with them, but people try it out and don't like it. And I think it's the same thing I had with Friend Feed. I kept telling people, come over to Friend Feed. It's really cool, really useful. You can have these live conversations. And people like Tim O'Reilly tried it out and said, I can't use this. It's too noisy. I don't have enough control of who shows up on my screen. And I'm going back to Twitter, where I have total control of who shows up on my screen.
Yeah. So let me say one other thing. I think you raise a good point, and I think typically it's not just the case with Buzz. It's the case with a lot of social products, especially now, where you get a lot of those sort of like early folks who will try something out for 5 minutes and then sort of lose interest. And that's sort of a natural boom and bust of a lot of social apps today, especially in the way that things spread. It's how those products evolve over time and grow with users that I think matters. One of the things that I think is interesting to us, and I think John's been working on a solution to this, is figuring out a way in which you can use tools that are native to your everyday work habits and behaviors and interact with a lot of people from across the social web, as opposed to dealing with people who are just in one network or another. And we're a long way off from actually having that become a reality, but we are starting to see glimmers of hope where this is becoming more possible. So for example, someday, not today unfortunately, you should be able to post to Buzz, have that content get syndicated out in real time to other networks. For example, ClickSet or StatusNet or Twitter or Facebook or wherever. People will react and respond to those social objects as they receive them, and those messages will actually flow back to you using Buzz.
You know what, though? I really hate that world. I despise that world. I am on Facebook, and I want to see content in Facebook that is specific to Facebook. I read Twitter all day long. I have a monitor just running Seismic or TweetDeck or something like that, and I want something separate in Buzz and whatever else Google does. This world where you shove messages back and forth, and increase my noise and increase my duplication really just turns me off. I've removed all of the tweets from Facebook. And in Google Buzz, as soon as you guys give me better filtering systems, I'm going to remove Twitter and I'm going to remove Facebook items from there, because the real value in Google Buzz is people who are in Google Buzz and participating there. The stuff that gets flown over from Twitter and from Facebook really, really sucks. And
well, that completely flies in the face of the whole work that you've been doing on activity streams.
Let me respond to that.
I think that's first of all, there are people who do want to do exactly what you don't want to do. There are quite a few people that want to do that. Second, I'm talking to Robert in this case.
Oh, I know, because it's really easy to publish from one place and have your message straight out everywhere.
I don't want to have the duplicates. I want to have a filtering capability on all these services. But the problem right now is that we've got these different silos with different formats, and there are this is how we get into the discussion about so-called open data and all of that science fiction. So what seems to me much more important to observe, and I want to hear Kevin's comments on this, is the notion that if a service can produce a quality product that, as Chris suggested, does serve a small passionate group of people, and at the same time also provides some sort of outreach that attracts people where they can set up their own disparate communities, sort of simultaneously, as what happened with FriendFeed before it was sold. You get a very vibrant audience, which right now has largely moved to Buzz and is about the same size as what that community was in FriendFeed, but with not quite the flow as what those of us who continue to be on FriendFeed were looking for. So, to having a sort of multiplexed environment where people can have their cake and eat it too is definitely what I think is going to work in the marketplace. And go ahead, and I'd like to hear Kevin's thoughts on this.
So I think that's right. I think the frustrations Robert's got with it is exactly why we're trying to standardize this stuff and get these things to interoperate. And a good example of that is the stuff that the Windows Live team have been doing. There's a blog post I'll paste in to the chat that was written by Rob Dolan that describes how they're using activity streams to unify information from all manner of situations, all these different sources that they pull into Windows Live. And we tend to ignore Windows Live because we're not in that world. But that is a very big.
Well, what world is that, by the way?
There's a set of Windows users who live in that, and none of us are Windows users. Anyone here a Windows user? See?
Nope. Yes.
Danny is.
Yes.
I use it
he
occasionally.
Said lonely and.
But you don't use Live and Messenger. You don't live in Messenger the way you live in GChat or whatever.
No.
Yeah. So it's
not me, but there are hundreds of millions of people around the world that do.
Yeah, I knew you used to, Robert, when you were paid to, but.
There are people that
so
use
you're aware of
too,
that stuff. So that's interesting. It'd be interesting if they adopted PubSub Hubbub too. I don't think they've picked up that piece of it yet, but that's why we're building all these things as composable pieces now. The model we had before was, okay, let's define everything together as open social and then do it that. What we found then was getting everyone to adopt that meant they had to adopt the whole thing. So these protocols we've got now are individual solutions to a particular problem that compose together something interesting, and people can build them incrementally and add them together, and that's what we're seeing here.
Right, and John just typed into the. You want to just say what you typed, John?
Yeah, sure thing. Part of what we're trying to do, especially with activity streams, is to identify standards so that you can reliably identify messages, which is the basis for being able to say whether you've seen something before or not. So you can say that I've seen that thing over on this other network, and that.
So is there metadata with each message now that captures that somehow? And
yes.
And where is the standard, and why? How can we help evangelize that standard? And does anybody want to own it? Because that's part of the getting a standard.
Yeah, so that's
that Facebook's going to support, and Twitter's going to support, and Google's going to support.
I don't know why. I don't see why it's that big of a problem. I mean, I got things that I see on Twitter. I go to Facebook. It's a completely different environment. I don't want you to somehow filter my Facebook and keep stuff out that I might have seen on Twitter, because if you do it just based on the URL, then it may be that there's some comments on Facebook that are unique and interesting to me over there as well.
Well, that's true,
I mean,
but wouldn't it be
you're not
nicer?
going to centralize all this stuff. I mean, you can't centralize the web.
You know,
But
but
you
you're
have
trying to,
people who do
you're
the
trying to
same
distribute
things.
it. Yeah. You're not trying. You know,
Well, I know, but you have people right now who complain, well, there's this story written and there's comments on that story, but then somebody makes comments on Dig and somebody makes some comments over here and some comments over there, and they all ought to be pulled together. That never happens. So these the social
John,
media
tell them
sites are
about
going to do
Salmon.
things on their own.
So let me jump in here, because unfortunately John and I need to leave, and Kevin, you can explain about salmon after we're gone.
No,
but
because
I
I'm going
do
to
want
kill the show
respond
as soon as you
to
leave.
Robert, because he makes a very valid point.
I need to leave too, but yeah.
And the idea is not to get to the point where we no longer have differentiated spaces in which we interact and consume relevant content. The point is actually to create and increase the number of contexts in which we can interact in ways that are both meaningful and purposeful. The reality right now, though, is that you have to actually use tools like Facebook or Twitter for all sorts and all manner of conversations, whether or not that medium is well suited for those types of interactions. So when we enable this type of cross-network federated conversation to occur, I don't believe that it's so much the case where the idea is to syndicate all this crap all over the place without any sense for who the audience is. It's quite the contrary. Instead, the idea is to be able to allow people to use the tools and the context in which they feel most comfortable, to be able to receive notifications in a way that is familiar to them, and then to actually participate in a way that doesn't force them to sign up for a new account just to leave a comment. So it's kind of about engagement, and it's also about letting new types of tools spring up that don't yet exist, that we can't even imagine yet, because the technology and the protocols and the formats simply aren't there yet. So I understand what you're saying, and I think that it's a very, very valid point. I think that context is everything. But we haven't gotten to the point where we're at the logical end of where the social web is going, so we want to enable new types of things to happen based on the development of these new technologies.
Well, I basically think that what Danny is saying and what you're saying are two sides of the same coin. I mean, I think Danny's right that there's a bifurcation between, say, Facebook comments and every other comment, particularly because Facebook doesn't really have a round-trip comment scenario, unlike most of the others, including Twitter, even though it's sort of ad hoc. And on the other hand, I think that it would be, I don't post comments on Facebook very much, because it's basically I'm shouting back into the bit bucket. It just doesn't go anywhere. There's no aspiration model that attains from that. I don't particularly care whether anybody hears what I have to say, because most people ignore it to begin with. But the people that are interesting, that bubble up, this whole concept of discovery is so important to what is going to happen with these technologies, and Facebook doesn't offer that. So if there's some way of being able to bring Facebook into the stream, whether by pulling those comments over in such a way that we can interact with them, or as Facebook opens up, pushing it into that stream and aggregating it. I don't care. I think I'm like everybody here. I don't care how many different services there are, as long as there's a way of being able to have them be equal voices.
Sure.
Right.
Yep. And with that, we got to take off, guys. But thanks.
All right. Well, thanks, and keep up the good work. And
Me too.
Let us know about the Twitter import, because until then.
Let us know as soon as we know.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, John. Thanks, Chris. I just want to spend a couple more minutes with Danny and Kevin and Robert. Danny, what this week? Anything floating your boat about something that you find interesting that happened this week?
Well, I mean, we had Google roll out voice calling within Gmail, which I thought was interesting in that it was such a weird thing where Google actually rolled out a product that they said, when you asked them how are you going to make money off of it, they said, well, we hope to generate money off of people buying it, buying credits to use it. I mean, normally Google's like, well, we're not worried about making money, or, well, we'll make money off the ads. So I thought that was interesting, and I also thought it was interesting in that Gmail continues to be, I think, their most important social product. You know, we've just had this whole conversation about the things that they're trying to do, what they can do with Buzz. Buzz isn't going anywhere, right? I mean, Robert, between June and July, you gained 362 users on Buzz.
Yeah,
In
I
the same
gained
period,
I gained 600 on Foursquare in just the last couple of weeks, and I've gained a few thousand on Twitter.
Mashable
Just-
gone up like 207 people. I mean, that's nothing compared to what they would be doing on something like Facebook or what they'd be doing on Twitter. So, you know, Buzz is just kind of sitting there, and that's not, you know, maybe something will happen down the line. But what's interesting is that Gmail, if you will, Facebook has 500 million members. How many members does Google have? We don't know. It's never expressed in that way, right? Nobody says they have this many million. You don't think about millions of members going into
Well,
it.
they have
And so we
Gmail
focus on
users.
how Facebook keeps growing and growing. But Gmail is the closest approximation Google has to Facebook members. These are people who have registered, who tend to use the service on a regular basis. And now for the second time, we've watched Google try to use Gmail to upstart or jumpstart something else. You know, first it was Buzz, now it was the Google voice calling. And the interesting thing with the voice calling is that you start making phone calls to people, you start adding to your address book, it becomes more important. Your address book is all in the cloud. Guess what? If you're on an Android phone, then it doesn't matter what phone you're using, you can take those addresses easily with you, as opposed to, say, I think if you're using the iPhone, your address book is going to be synced. So I just think that there's other things going on there that may help them in the long run, and you know, keep watching Gmail and how they're going to apply it to some of their other social media.
Yeah, there have been several pieces by one by O'Malley and a couple of pieces that have basically explored this Gmail as the hub of the social strategy of but there was also Stephen Pickering in the conversation in the chat room earlier saying, you know, he thinks it's a waste of energy for Google to be trying to do social. So, you know, there are various, you know, I mean,
they've got to do something other than, I mean, they haven't brought anything that gives us any compelling reason not to use Twitter or not to use Facebook. You know, Buzz to me, it's you know, a little better than Twitter in some respects, and certainly when Twitter fails, I go over use it, and that's when I notice other people that are over there. If you want to have some quick conversations, you certainly can do what Twitter can't do, but it's not that compelling. And if they were to launch a Facebook competitor tomorrow, it'd be like, why? Why should I go use your Facebook competitor any more than I want to use Bing? I mean, Google suffices for me, does a great job for me, so I don't have any particular incentive to start running around using Bing just for the heck of it. And in the same regard, if Facebook's doing what Facebook is doing for a lot of people and keeping them satisfied, they're not got any reason to go run over and use a Google clone. So they've got to, if they want to be successful in social, find something really, really unique or different, or to play on some of their search expertise, you know.
Kevin, you're at the VRM workshop at
Right.
Doc Searles in Cambridge. What does that have any relationship to what we're talking about here?
I think it does to some extent. I think there's.
By the way, Steve, I gotta go. So
Okay, Robert. Thanks very much.
See you, Robert.
hey, thanks.
The basic idea of VRM is to turn customer relationship management around and give you back control over your experience with companies. But what we're seeing is that what you've got is a collective action problem. The problem is that the companies tend to have more power than the individual. And the way that people are actually doing that sort of power take back is through the social things like Facebook and Twitter and so on. And the other part of the VRM worldview is to have a personal data store where the records that companies keep on you belong to you, and you can decide what they have. One statistic that Ian gave out here was that in the UK there are 60 million people and 25 billion records of them inside companies, because every company has records of everybody else, and they're all out of date and bad and so on. So part of the point is if you can be in control and decide what you give to the companies to use, that's more useful. So there's some crossover there, because the biggest stores of data that we have about ourselves are things like Facebook and like the Google contacts that Danny was talking about, that are gradually growing, and the Google profiles that are part of that too. Having those information in common formats that we can move back and forth then becomes very valuable. So that's an important part of it. As in terms of what Google can do with social, I think there's a lot of potential there. I thought there was when I was there, and I still think that's true. The challenge is it isn't a natural thing for Google to do. It isn't the way they think. But I'm hoping that these guys can do some more good work there, and Rohit joining them is I think that's interesting and valuable too. Rohit's a very good thinker about this stuff and has built some very interesting things here.
Yeah, in this area of aggregating various streams from
so Steve, you're faded down
the network. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So Danny, I've been reading the Facebook Effect book. Have you read that?
No, I haven't.
It's by David Kirkpatrick, and I attended a conversation between Mike Arrington and David, which didn't really go to where I see this book going. I find it much more compelling in retrospect, reading this book, that the things that Facebook has been saying for such a long time about how difficult it is to be able to retain their momentum and at the same time adopt a more Twitter-like capability. In retrospect, now reading this book and seeing how historically the company has made decisions, and particularly driven by Zuckerberg, I think that they're actually quite right about what they've done in terms of ignoring some of the social noise that we are so precious about defending because it was originally so powerful. And so I don't know, that's just sort of a turnaround in my thinking about Facebook. I've always felt that they were just way too slow to be able to respond, and I think that what we're seeing with Google is how difficult it is to catch up to what Facebook has done. Your thoughts?
A couple of things. I'd argue the opposite, that Facebook isn't slow at all, and in fact they're way too fast. It's maddening that every 3 months it seems like they change everything around. Hey, we're going to give you all fan pages. Oh no, those aren't fan pages anymore, they're like pages. And everybody who was your fan are now your likes, or whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. And by the way, we're now going to give you all interest pages. And don't remember about those groups, because the groups don't mean as much as they do with the fan pages that we had. And oh, those interest pages that we had, now we're having we're having Facebook Places pages. And anybody who had an interest page or a fan page, it was a local business, you're now going to be a Facebook page, whatever. I mean, these go on and on and on. And you want to say, could you guys just get your shit together for a little while? And pick some terminology and give us some kind of system and go with it. And at the same time, well, maybe that's successful, that they don't really seem to care in what they've done before. They just keep moving on and on and on and on.
So, I mean, that's certainly, that's fair. But the other example that I would give is what they did in terms of rolling out first across colleges, and then they tried to go into sort of a business domain for a while, work groups, something like that. And it was a miserable failure, but they didn't stop. They just basically kept moving forward until they got to opening it up as across, with no limitation on being at a specific domain of a college, and it exploded. Right. So, this kind of iterative strategy. I'm not so sure that it may be frustrating to people who actually take every step literally, but look at the people who got into Wave and then got into Buzz and then are going to get into the next thing. I mean,
yeah, but it's not just frustrating. I'm not speaking as it being frustrating from the perspective of a user. I'm speaking about it being as frustrating as perspective of a publisher and an advertiser, that That's what they're built on, right? It's great you have all these users, but if you can't take care of your publishers and you can't take care of your advertisers, all those users don't matter to you. And so what have they done? They rolled out these like things, and they told everybody to put them out on their pages, and you're going to do all this promotion or whatever. So we go out there and we build up our fan pages, which, by the way, after you've built up your fan page, incredibly easy for your competitor to come along and target ads against them. So nice for Facebook, nice for your competitor, not so nice for you. They don't have any things to let you control that. You can't block certain advertisers from showing up on your fan pages. All you can do is go over there and build everything up on their site to their benefit so that other people can target them.
Well, they need,
they need
Facebook search engine land. They don't, I mean, you need to be applying these criticisms much more directly.
Oh, I've got to finish it. It's called 25 Reasons Why I Hate Facebook Marketing. And their frustrations because I want to market on Facebook, and I see the potential there. But then they do other things like they roll out the interest pages. So suddenly you've got people like companies like, I can't remember who it was. It wasn't Sun. I think it was Intuit. But just really upset that suddenly their brand got turned into an interest page, and they don't have any control over it. And Facebook gets a page that then goes out into Google, and it's like, oh, okay, we didn't know that you also had to be Wikipedia on top of being Facebook. And there was some other thing that they did that really has an impact. It's not just the interest pages, but the places pages are another example. So you're a local business, let's say, that's actually decided that it made sense for you to dive into Facebook. You built out a fan page, and now they tell you you don't get to have a fan page anymore. No, your fan page is going to be a Facebook places page. And that's in the space of like 6 months. It's just crazy. It's crazy, and I think the reason people do it and still hang with it is because of the potential that's out there. But I think they should take better care of stuff. Now, having said that, certainly,
thank you.
It's not stopping to breathe. Doesn't seem to be slowing them down.
No, and it seems to be speeding them up.
But with Google, I don't think it's a case of them being too slow. I think it's a case of them just being out of it. What are they going to build? They by the time they kind of woke up to social and what Facebook was going to be doing, it's already out the gate. And their catch up, I think, will be as slow as the catch up that Microsoft is facing. They just got to figure out what their product's going to be, and then maybe they never get a product. But that's the other thing. It's like Facebook, Google might not ever have a social product. And that could be all right in the same way that Facebook may never have a web search product or a search product in general, and that might be all right. It's almost funny sometimes to watch the two companies bang their heads against this, although Facebook really doesn't bother with search. But Google certainly messes with social.
Kevin, last thoughts?
Well, Google had a social product before Facebook, which was Orkut, and it's still out there. They updated that this week as well. So it's not that they don't know how to do it. It's a question of whether that particular one takes off or not. So there's there are challenges there. I think this is the point of all the stuff we're talking about, the pub stuff and the standardization of this, is that we should be able to move this stuff between. And as you were saying about the Google, Twitter, Facebook sort of awkward triangle of can you see our data or not, that does continue. You had Facebook and Twitter having this sort of mutual blocking thing going on this week as well. And that, when we had the same thing with Friend Connect and Facebook before, where it's like we want everyone to use our data, except you. And it may be that maybe Microsoft can come through because people aren't scared of them anymore and actually build an integration point that people use.
No, I don't think so. I think
the stuff they've done in live is really impressive.
I understand. They've been the most open company for quite a long time. That doesn't mean that it translates into velocity, which they don't have.
Yeah, maybe true.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it on this. I mean, just to comment on Danny's point, we saw a perfect example in the lack of communication across two virtually identical technologies. One on top of PubSub, which is a very good sign, and the other, the update feature of the new live real-time Google search, which is how I actually found out that they had been doing this thing, because I signed up for it on my name, and it came through and told me that they were doing this. So there is something really compelling about the meshing, pardon the expression, of these technologies. Yet we're probably as far away from it as we were 2 days ago. So I want to thank Danny and Kevin and Chris and John and the Scobleizer. I want to thank Rackspace and particularly Rob Legess, without whom their support this show would not have returned to the air, and NewTek and their TriCaster, without which we wouldn't have been able to make the transition to video. I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase, and I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. See you next time. Bye-bye.